What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lifted Conversations. And I have the honor to have someone very special, near and dear to my heart again this week. The woman who is responsible for my existence, who endured a lot to get me here and a lot to get me to the space that I am today. She is an upstanding citizen of this society. She's a woman who prays for you, for her, and for everyone. This is Andrea Tucker, the butterfly. How you doing today, Mom?
I am doing wonderful today. I'm doing wonderful.
That's great. And hopefully during this episode, they really get to understand why I say the butterfly. It's not only your favorite animal, but it is representation of who you are. So hopefully this episode does you justice, lifted conversations. I appreciate you coming on, making time for me today, as you've done so many times in my life. So, this is just, something that I just want to make sure I appreciate, because everybody is not about getting in front of these cameras and talking, and in this day and age, how things can go. So the fact that you had the bravery to do so is a testament to who you are and who you've grown to be. So, we want to start off with your early life. Now, I know a lot about you, just like my wife. I know a lot about her, but I want the people to get to know you and be acclimated with who you are and how you came to be who you are today. So, I know that you were born in Philadelphia, spent a significant amount of your life in Philadelphia and the surrounding areas, and Delaware County being one of them. But I also know you spent some time in the Northeast, Connecticut, and San Diego. Right?
Definitely San Diego. Connecticut was more just visiting, but
Visiting? Okay.
yes, I did spend a year in San Diego.
San Diego. Okay. So my question with that is, being that you have moved, you've spent most of your time in Philly, but you've had some experiences elsewhere, and things like that. What has those places, those regions, states, cities, what impact have they had on you?
To be real honest with you, as far as like the Philadelphia area and surrounding areas that I lived majority of my life, um, I don't. A lot of times we didn't stay long enough in places for them to have such a deep impact on me.
Okay.
Honestly, in San Diego for the year, it impacted my life, but not for the good. Uh, as an 8-year-old little girl who spent a year in a lot of chaos and at times violence, some what I would categorize as abuse. But with the adults in our lives in that time, they just consider it whoopings, But it was really abusive when I looked down, upon them. And then a lot of uncertainties in my life and in that year of as to be 8 in San Diego, and a lot of fear moments, more so than I'm thinking I should have been a very joyfully free, 8-year-old little girl. But I think I carried a lot of weight. I probably didn't have names to any of this, but I'm just saying feelings of the weight that I was probably carrying. So that impacted me, and more sense of me bringing out more of the fear side of me and the insecure side of me and the lack of not feeling safe in a lot of areas. So I think that had a lot more negative impact on me than it had positive.
Okay. All right. Now, with that being said, the next question I want to know, because I think even in traumatic situations, there are flashes of moments where you can kind of look and see that you were always becoming what God intended you to become, even in those traumatic, violent, abusive, uncertain, anxious moments. What I want to know is, as a little girl, who were you becoming before you had the language to be able to define that?
If I think back on it, I was probably becoming the resilient woman that I am today and that I continue to grow into. But I also want to say, as far as with that word resiliency, and I understand, a lot of times we like to use that word and we look upon it as such a wonderful, positive thing, but realistically, and I heard this from somewhere, so it's not something originally from me, but um, it, part of that really is we should never have been placed in a position to have to be resilient. If we were really cared for and loved and protected by the adults in our lives. So I like to just put that in there, because a lot of
Yeah.
times resilience is fine, but there's another side to that where, sometimes you're just placed in that position. But I can see where the Lord was calling me to be a woman of strength and courage and stickability and determination. And I wouldn't know it then, though, because I'm obviously I'm a little girl, so I'm focusing more on my fear places and my scared places. But realistically, when I look back, that was never who God created me to be. So that wasn't supposed to be my legacy. That to be fearful and to be uncertain all the time and things like that. Through those times, I can see where things were being developed in me. But like you said, before I could have a name to tag to what that was, because I had no clue.
Yeah, yeah, and that goes right into this next segment. I want to talk about faith before having a language for it, right? And it's not necessarily just have to do with you being a little girl, but even before you decided to fully submit to the will and the way of God and follow Christ. I want to go into talking about what that looked like for you looking back, because they say hindsight is 2020. So looking back, what are some ways that you can identify that God had his hands, like you have a story or anything where he had his hand on your life and he really, really, really gave you grace or mercy in a moment that you weren't necessarily thinking about God for whatever reason?
There's many stories I can look back and think upon my life. Like you said, that I didn't know what it was or who it was, who even shielded and protected me in some very silly, crazy, immature times of my life, where like I said, I wasn't thinking about God, but I it's funny. I think back on one time I left a girlfriend friends of mine, um, and I wanted to go home, and she wasn't home at the time. And I remember I walked, and I walked. I was in Yeadon, Pennsylvania, and I lived in Lansdowne, and it was maybe about 4 o'clock in the morning. I walked, and I had to walk along Wycombe Avenue, which is cemetery, most part of it on, one side, but just 4 o'clock in the morning. And I made it safely home. But when I look back some years ago, when I look back on that time, I was like, wow, God, you were there.
Yeah,
Like you were watching over me, you were protecting me because it's 4 a.m. in the morning as a woman
yeah, yeah,
walking by myself. And like it's like little times like that. Even there's many instances, even as a little girl, if I can look back on that, were very scary. I was just sharing this past week um, with your auntie, Pastor Chris. But I was just sharing. It's interesting. I had thought about a story, a time when I was a little girl out at some party with my mother and sleep on a couch, um, and awaken abruptly because gunshots,
hmm
started. And then, so abruptly being awakened, and from my mother grabbing me and my younger sister and running us out of this house to a car. See, when I look back on times like that, I know there's a God, and I
yeah,
know there
yeah,
was a
yeah,
God who was covering and looking out for me, because that situation could have been totally different. I could not be sitting here and I could not be your mother. But it's God, and now I'm being more contemplative over my life, and revisiting
yeah.
I'm revisiting some things from my childhood on. And at each step that was very scary to me, that I thought was going to be the end, I can see the hand of God. And so even though I didn't know it, I didn't have a relationship with him at that moment. I knew of him because praise the Lord, from my aunt and uncle who I lived with until I was 6 years old. I believe they were the foundation of introducing me to Jesus because they were churchgoers.
Yeah.
They were involved, and I was in church, every Sunday. I was in church during the week and Sunday school. And this came from them. because once I left them at 6, that was not my life. So I really accredit, again, God placed them in my life for such a time as that. When I didn't understand why was I living with relatives and not with my mother. But when I look back now and I see it was all a part of God's plan.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's really good. Last question I want to ask about this part of the faith side of it. How would you describe your faith now compared to your earlier seasons in life?
Oh, I have a very strong and growing faith
Mm-hmm.
now. Um, I just my life is nothing but faith. Every day I wake up, it's faith. I just believe that God is God, and I just believe that God loves me, that He's looking out for me, even in the hardest of times. Because I'm not saying anything to say that my life is just full of roses and things like that. Not at all. But I have such a faith now. See, I think prior, my faith was more into people. It was more into maybe things. I probably had more faith in my own feelings of what was maybe going on or not going on. But now I've transferred and I have to continue to transfer my faith strictly to the Lord. Like my faith is in Him and Him alone on this journey. And yes, I have to remind myself from time to time because sometimes when life is lifing, I might look like, oh, maybe if I could just do this and my faith, I'm putting my faith over there. Or you know, I put my faith on my paycheck, the day that I'm going to get paid or whatever when I
Yeah,
need some more money to pay a bill. And it's like, no, Jehovah Jireh, that's who I serve. That means the guy who provides. And so my faith is in God, where before it would be more so in people and things.
got you, got you. Looking at identity, I want to talk about how yours was shaped as specifically as a woman, and looking at your womanhood and selfhood. So, what did womanhood mean to you when you were growing up?
Womanhood? Well, I think it kind of meant that to be, cute.
Okay.
Okay, you're cute. Uh, and you use your cuteness to get what you want. And, it's like, hey, I wasn't one of those young women and, women that was like, I am woman, hear me roar type of person. I wasn't that type of person, but it definitely I look more into I think my outwardness, my appearance, my beauty, my charm. I looked at women as the women that I had in my life. They were more like hustlers. They were hustlers, and as a lot of us were taught in those eras. I was also taught and told that I was supposed to have my own, even if I ever got married, hey, put your money aside now. Don't let them know,
Yeah,
keep,
yeah.
so you can do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I was taught and what was demonstrated for me or modeled before me growing
Yeah,
up. I just laugh now, just when I think about that. But like I said, womanhood was more of that. I think it was more to me like, as long as you look good and you're cute, girl, you'll get what you want and you'll get to where you want to get to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's funny. I'm listening to you, and I saw a post the other day that somebody posted. Actually, it was yesterday, and they were talking about how like our generation of men, or like I'll say like young Gen X to older millennial to maybe millennial men, particularly those of us who are educated and are at a certain social economic status and still single, have this kind of fantasy of returning to what the generation that raised you's era of time, where women had a certain role and women were to be basically like how we look at children, seen and not heard. And they were not to have really much complaint if there was abuse, if there was infidelity, which all those things kind of ran rampant in the silent generation. Because it was like, as long as you have a house over your head, clothes on your back, food to prepare for our children, it don't matter if I have two or three other families
Right.
across town here, just in the same 20-minute vicinity of us. If I got two other families over there, it doesn't matter if you're being taken care of. And so you need to be quiet because guess what? As women in that time, they couldn't own anything. So I could imagine women who have always been intelligent, who have always been able to make something out of nothing, who have always held it down on the home front, teaching their daughters at that time, this is the way things are, but here's how we get somewhat of a leg up. Keep your money to the side. Don't let them know you got it there, just in case it gets so bad. Even though in that case, it might have been his money technically, right, because he's the one that's working in the traditional sense. He's the one bringing it. Put some stuff to the side for yourself, just in case it gets so unbearable that you do need to leave, so you don't leave with nothing, so that you can actually have something to lean on while you're on the run. And so when I hear you say that, it makes sense that we get to, what, 3 generations after that, because it'd be your generation, or no, your ex. So it'd be, yeah, we're 3 generations, because now Gen Z is old enough to be like in relationships and married and stuff like that. So 3 generations after, you have the complaint from the men of the Gen Z generation saying that these women are saying that they're independent, they don't need no help and all that. And it's like, well, because now many women are educated. Right. And then when it comes to manual labor, there's not many of those jobs left over. So there is no unbalanced in the workforce. It's like, if we work at an office, we do the same thing, or we do the same level of thing. You're not the one carrying physical weight. You're sitting at a desk like I'm sitting at a desk. Right, so why isn't the pay the same? So I say that to say it makes sense to have the mindset transferred over that, hey, this is what I've had to endure. I don't want you to endure it. So I want you to be able to do better, and I want you not to have to rely on a man. When I hear don't rely on a man, I don't hear we don't need men. I hear we don't accept men the way that they've been allowed to be historically. And we want men to evolve beyond the days of them working in the mills and in the fields and being the one bringing the food home and things like that. So womanhood has evolved because the landscape of work has evolved. The access to resources and property and things like that have evolved for women. So I understand why you would, like you said, most of the women that are around you were hustlers. They had to be. Right. They had to be.
Right. Well, I was raised by a single mother who had 5 children.
Right.
And so, and she was cute.
Yeah.
She was absolutely beautiful, actually. Yeah. She was beautiful, and she was gorgeous. And she knew it. Mm-hmm. But she also knew that was the thing that got the attraction for her from men, and that she could use to get whatever she wanted from men. And so, like, she was a brilliant woman. I don't know if she tapped into her brilliance as much as she could have, because she was a survivor. And so she survived all of her life. So she relied on her looks, her charm, all of that to get what she wanted. And then some of that was trying to spill over into me. Mm-hmm. But I think, again, that's one of those moments when I can say, when I look back on my life now, and although I was not acknowledging him, he was always working it out in me, that I did not fully go in that direction, because I could have easily done that. I could have easily been a woman who truly just used her beauty and her charm to many men. It's not, whoever came along, and stayed in that mode, because that was the plan of the enemy for my life. And then when I look back now, I realized, so that squashed a lot of my true identity. And so I didn't grow up. I wasn't maturing in an identity of, wow, Andrea, you're brilliant, you're intelligent, all of that. And so that way I didn't do it. So what? I didn't go to college right out of high school. Yeah. Why? Because I didn't believe I could. I didn't think I had the smarts to do college. So I knew I could go to work. I'll go work and get some money, but I'll also on the side, have my little fun, or whatever that meant for me in the time to get things that I wanted. And you know what I mean? So it's like, it was that stealer in me, like, no. And I think however my mother was, I was supposed to be the same way. And for those of you, I love my mother. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Believe me, I loved her.
You can love somebody and tell the truth, right?
Right. I love my mother. Because look, if I ain't thankful for one thing, if it's not a many things I can be thankful for, of which it is, I can be thankful that she kept me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I look back at myself, when you speak of identity, for me, it's interesting. I'm just, in my, I figure, third act of life here, probably just beginning to come into my identity. So I didn't really know Andrea in so many years and who she was. So it's like I think of the movie The Runaway Bride. And so I feel
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of my life was when the scene where Richard Gere asks Julia about what kind of eggs do you like, and she was like, what kind of eggs do you eat? And then he was like, what kind of eggs do you like? And again, she was like, well, whatever kind of eggs you like. And then he asked her again. And when she stopped and she had to think about it, and she was like, wow, I don't know, because I only liked whatever type of eggs the man that I was with liked.
Wow.
But I don't know what kind of eggs I really like. And I look at a lot of my journey in that way. I just, whatever, okay, that's what, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Oh, yeah, okay. But who was really Andrea?
Right, right. That's a
So,
good one. If you could encourage a young lady right now who's heading into young womanhood, so between the ages of, let's say, 18 and I would say 23, 24, right now, about that identity piece of really getting an understanding of who she is, what is some words you would share with a young lady like that?
well, off the top, what I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say, build a relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ,
Okay.
because our identity is in Him,
Mm-hmm.
and He is the only one that can tell us who we are.
Yeah.
Because before we were even in our mother's womb, He had already created us, which means He's already designed us specifically. He has, He's the architect
Yes.
of our life. And who better to go to than the architect to find out who you are? So for me, because I didn't have people speaking like that in my life
Yeah.
growing up. But now I would tell a young lady, this is, the deal is build a relationship with the Lord, because then you can delve into His Word and you can begin to hear from Him of who you really are.
Okay. That's good advice. That's good advice. I firmly believe that. And I think even a young man watching could
Right.
take that piece of advice as well, but specifically in keeping in mind that we're in Women's History Month and so many great things that women have done that have been, and they couldn't have done those things unless they stepped outside of what their role in society was.
Right, right,
Right.
right.
Because women, like I said, had a certain role. So when we think about, historical figures, women particularly, we think about how, like, I think about a very common, we could talk about Harriet Tubman.
Right,
What she did was very, in a traditional sense, considered to be masculine,
right.
as far as how she took an initiative upon herself to free not only herself but to go back. And she was a bad woman. Like we know stories about her. So many times where if a woman would have stayed in what the traditional man says is a woman's place, what would we look like now?
Right,
You know what I mean?
right,
Like
right.
she was a pivotal part in our freedom.
Right.
And what will we look like if every woman who made tremendous history, whether it's in our freedom and rights, whether it's in business, whether it's in just invention, innovation, women are responsible for so much. And those things are also considered to be outside of the realm of what was their role traditionally in society. So definitely seek the Lord, because the Lord definitely has a different mindset,
Right,
and
right.
growing up in the churches that I grew up in, particularly under the pastor that I grew up under, and his wife as well, Pastor Chris, we learn that what a lot of even believers say. This is why it's important to have a relationship with God, like you mentioned. That's why I said it's so important that people hear that part you're saying. You're not saying go to church.
Right.
You're not
right.
saying,
No.
and yes, go to church, but we're not saying that that's going to help you find your identity.
Right.
We're not saying no, your identity is in God through Jesus Christ. So you have to really be in the Word, because if not, if you go to these churches, some of these churches, they're promoting something based off of a snippet or pericope, as Pastor would like to say, of a verse that they've taken, and then instead of exegeting, they eisegete. I don't know if I said it the right way, but whatever one is put in, you put in
One puts
interpretation
in, one you
as
isolate.
opposed to yes. So instead of taking what the word is saying for what it is and applying it appropriately, they take it and kind of attach cultural norms and things to it, and they put women in a certain area that way. So that's why I wanted to stop there and kind of zero in on that and say, let's make sure we're really having a relationship with God and following Christ and really being in the Word and really hearing what God is saying in the Word, not what some man has taken and now interpreted to you to say, well, this is where women should be. And, you know, it says here that women shouldn't speak. And it's like, that was out of, like, there's a context for that. And so no amount of reading can escape context. Regarding, so next thing I want to move into is, now we talked about womanhood, selfhood, and what womanhood and selfhood look like for you and why it looked that way. Going into marriage, specifically looking at being a wife, I just want to ask one, maybe even two, like as a follow-up question, but definitely one, what did you, being a wife, look like for you prior to getting married? And then after spending over 30 years, 30 plus years in marriage, how did that change towards the latter half of the time you were married?
Well, prior to marriage, I didn't have many marriages as examples. As I said, I was raised by a single mother who got married. I mean, later in, I think I was 12. No, I was 19. Actually, I was 19 when she married, my stepfather. So all those years, I wasn't around married people like that. So I didn't really know what it was to be married, other than, you watch TV shows.
Yeah.
You see TV shows and which really they kind of more so romanticize this whole thing of marriage and being a wife. And then some of the TV shows, the old shows like Leave It to Beaver and all them, I mean, I was like, oh, I could never be that wife, in the sense of, because, they were always dressed to the nine in heels, cooking dinner and apron on the house all clean. I was like, I don't know about that, Then you had the Brady Bunch, which I love the Brady Bunch, and you're watching, this blended family or what have you. And so you're watching these examples.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, watching the Cosbys, okay. But I didn't know exactly what it was to be a wife. And I just went into it. One, I was young. I was 22. And I think when I look back now, it was probably more of, I was trying to escape something.
Okay.
And I believe also, as well as, my late husband was trying to escape something as well, or what have you. I believe early on, marriage was really more of utility, because neither one of us knew what marriage was. And so we went into this young, and I just played along as I went. Like, you make it up as you go along. Like, okay, well, okay, a wife does this. A wife, okay, she cooks. Okay, a wife cleans. All right, a wife, attends to her husband's needs or whatever that may be. And we just come and play house, because I played house a lot as a little girl. And so, okay, I'm playing house. This is what a wife does. And then the children come along. And so I add on to it, oh, I'm a wife and a mother now, and this is what it looks like. But I had no real clue that becoming a wife, and this is anybody, wife or husband, but becoming a wife, getting married really means you're ready to die to yourself.
Wow.
And you're ready to serve your spouse. And you're ready to love them unconditionally, no matter what that looks like. But yourself has to die.
Yeah.
And it can't be just all about you and what you want and what your needs. And also, it's not about, because when I get married, he's going to make me happy. Because not too long after getting married, I'm only going to speak for me. I ain't going to speak for nobody else's marriage. I don't know. But I know that reality really was squashed. Yeah. That this person is going to just, oh, you're going to make me happy. Because you know what it is, a lot of us we're high on in endorphins prior to marriage, and we think that dating and our dating life and however that played out is how life is going to be until eternity.
Yeah.
Which in reality, as I've learned and looked back we all kind of play a part in a role to get what we want and to get to where we want to get to.
Yeah.
And once we get to where we wanted to get to, we kind of like say, whoosh, okay, I can unzip this costume. I can take this mask off now.
Yeah.
And this me, you know. And I learned that, I watched that in early in marriage, like, oh my goodness, like, well, this is me now. Like, I'm not doing that, you know, or, you know, and prior to all that, I was doing that, you know. But it was like, nah, I'm good, you know, or, you know, you become very self-centered, or I think I was already self-centered though. But you come into this place of, what are you going to do for me now? How are you going to, you know, when I wake up, okay, I do this, but what are you going to do for me? And so as an immature woman who had no idea what marriage was really about, these are the nuances of the dances that I've had to learn through the years that were some tough times. It was some tough years. It was some very hurtful years and lonely years, you know, because of expectations, I'm saying, because I'm expecting something from this person, not realizing that during our dating time that this other person was putting on a persona that really wasn't them, and then felt comfortable once, you know, all right, I secured the bag, so now I'm just gonna go ahead and be comfortable and be me. And so you're like, you're devastated. At least, I mean, at least I was, you know, I'm devastated now. Like, wait a minute, because when before we was married, you always, you know, but I think that was the immaturity piece, and I had to grow over the years. And growth didn't come from the good times. Growth came from all them really hard, knocking into each other times. I like in life, period, but definitely relationships as a dance. And so there's always a new dance that's going to be learned. And so, and it's awkward. You know how when you're first learning how to dance, and maybe you're with a dance partner, and, you know, you spend a lot of time stepping on each other's toes because we are not in sync, and he's supposed to lead, but I want to control the lead. And so I'm not letting go. So now we have a power struggle, and the dance, we're off kilter. And then at some point, that season of the dance, all of a sudden we become in sync, and like we're dancing well. But once you start dancing well, there's always a new dance around the corner. And so I looked at our life, and I seen all those dances when we were not in sync, and then we'd be all right. You know, I'd handle some of those seasons well, and some of those seasons I did not handle well at all. And let me say this, I tell the people, if you ain't never thought about leaving your marriage, then are you really married? I'm just saying.
That's a hard word.
Right. If you ain't never thought about it, you know, are you really married? Because you're bringing two imperfect people together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're going to have those times. Doesn't mean you leave it, but sometimes the thought comes. Like, you know, what's the saying, women, what's the play? Is a play called I Can Do Bad All By Myself or something like that?
Yeah, Tyler Perry.
Okay, right. So, you know, especially with women. Right, my boy. Be like, you know, I can do bad all by myself, you know.
Right.
You know, but then, thank God, as I'm growing and maturing, and really it was when I built a relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
It was him, because honestly, if I never built that relationship with the Lord, and I started that when you were 2, if I had never started building that relationship with the Lord, you probably would have been a product of a divorce home. You probably definitely would have been. Jordan may not be here, but it was building a relationship with the Lord. It was coming along and meeting a Pastor James. Now Pastor Chris. She wasn't Pastor Chris then.
Yeah.
But beginning to teach discipleship and disciple me, teaching the word, preaching the word, but not only that, but living the word.
Yeah.
Before me, and coming alongside of me and teaching me of how to be a wife and what God says about a wife, being a wife, and you know, understanding the hard times, empathizing with the hard times, but also challenging me through with the word of God in my life, and helping me to love a man that at times was unlovable for me. And I'm sure I was unlovable for him at times, but I'm just saying, for me, the times when it was just like, it would have been much easier for me to walk away than to stay. in the marriage. And then it's, because I laugh when I think about most people who know us from the outside always thought like this was like, oh, this is such a wonderful marriage. Right, and I've had people say to me, oh my gosh, you,
Yeah.
like when your father passed, somebody said to me, oh my gosh, you all were the power couple for me. You were couple goals. And I'm like, yeah, no. From the outside, the inside wasn't like what you all think, and I understand you fantasized about what you think our life was, but it wasn't that, I promise you. But, it was that building that relationship with the Lord and having the right people come into my life at the right time and to help me. And it was all about me. So at that time as a wife, now I'm learning to take my focus off of my husband.
Yeah.
And coming, and then because the Lord wanted to do something in Andrea.
Yeah.
And he wanted, to work some things out in me. So he had to then teach me how to say, stop looking at him, stop looking at Levi, stop blaming him, stop looking at all his flaws, stop looking at all of that, because the Lord is like, because I'm God, I don't need your help in that. He's like, but you're distracted from hearing from me for you, of what I'm doing in you. So as I began to take my eyes off of, my spouse and began to seek the Lord and say, okay, Lord, what are you doing in me? What are you asking in me? Expose everything, Lord, that needs to be exposed, and then remove it. I had to repent a lot. Even as a wife, there were times I would say things very flippant out of my anger, but I thank God for accountability people like Pastor Chris, who I would go and then tell on myself. And I would tell on myself. And then she would, I love her because she would just, I understand why you would say that. And then she would look at me and just say, you do know when you go home, you need to go and repent and apologize to him, correct? And, I'll be like on the inside, like, no, I'm not doing that. But then she was like, and then after you do it, I need you to call me and let me know that you did it. So that's the kind of accountability I had. Yeah. So even if I was right in my stance,
okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it was some true legitimacy there to the pain that caused my reaction, still didn't make it right for me to, not love with the love of Christ, right?
It's like be angry, but sin not.
Right. So, but I had those like they're still in my life. But these are the people. If I had women like my mother, remember I love her. But if I had women, just surrounded myself with women like my mother, I would have been a man basher.
Yeah.
I would have been a man basher. And I definitely would have been probably encouraged to leave girl. Because girl, you got a right to do that. Because, nobody should, I didn't, the Lord seen to it as I got older that I didn't surround myself with women saying like that. But he sent a Pastor Chris in my life because he knew I was going to need her to walk with me on this journey of this whole thing of being a wife. And realizing like, okay, I remember years ago, I was going through some struggle and I was talking to Pastor James and he had took the air out of my balloon because he said, he looked at me and he said, you do know that the Lord did not create you to live a princess life, right? And I was like, dang, come on now, can I?
Yeah, you more cut from the Harriet Tubman cloth than you are from the Princess Diana cloth.
But see, I so wanted the princess, I just wanted, I'm Queen Ramonda, I'm mother here, right? Yeah, I wanted to be.
But to that point, she wasn't a weakling.
Well, she wasn't.
That's
no,
what I'm
she
saying.
wasn't. Right.
So that I love what Pastor said to you because he didn't create you so you weren't created to live a princess life.
Right.
You were created to be a queen.
Right.
So you were created to bypass the princess. Some people got to go through princess, and that's what I tell Luca. So you're a princess, and then one day you'll become a queen.
Right.
You need to learn from mom and Gigi and all this kind of stuff. Like I always tell that to her. She's a little girl, but I think sometimes people, not even just women, men take this like I'm a prince kind of air into being a man. It's like, no, you're becoming a king. You're becoming a queen. You're responsible for the things that you do and how those things play out in your family, in your community, and whatever. You're more responsible. Whereas a princess is just like, take care of me.
Right. And
I'm
I
just
wanted
gonna,
to be
like,
taken
whatever.
care of very badly, but that also comes from not being cared for
Right.
and protected as a child.
Right.
And right. So now I'm an adult and I just want you to care for me.
Yeah.
And I want to play the damsel in distress.
Yes.
I want to play that role, right?
Yeah.
But that really wasn't who I was. We have a running joke. I have a running joke with Pastor Chris about how I said, you kicked me off your lap. and she always says, I had to kick you off my lap. She said, because if I didn't, you would have just sat on my lap. I said, yes, I would have put my thumb in my mouth like my granddaughter. And I would have laid my head on your chest all these years and I wouldn't, do anything. She said, exactly. She said, so me and Pastor had to kick you off of our lap so you can become the woman that God created you to be.
But look how dynamic you've become. You were at every stage of your life a dynamic woman. And I look at the people who had that same experience, who got kicked off the lap, and their response was like a petulant toddler to have a tantrum.
Right.
You know what I mean? So instead of, all right, that hurt, I don't like the way that feels, but I'm okay. You know what?
Right.
I could do this, and I'm not losing them.
Now, mind you, I had my tantrum first, though.
Yeah, but you stayed.
Right.
A lot of people do their tantrums and stump out the door.
Right.
You didn't stump out the door. You stayed. You had your tantrum. You probably did your. I ain't rocking with them right now.
Right.
I ain't talking to them right now.
I ain't doing it.
Knowing Pastor Chris, knowing Pastor, they ain't gonna leave you alone. So they like, oh, see, you ain't talking to me, huh? They tugging on your coattail like, see, you ain't talking, huh? What's wrong with you? What's going on? And then you get space. And I love that you talked about the accountability piece, because that's another big thing that comes up on social media. I don't know if you see it, how men say women don't like to take accountability. And I was like, I think people just don't like accountability.
Right.
Not just women, but people. Because in your case, like you said, you would go back even when you might have knew I'm right in my stance and in the position I'm taking or what I'm taking it for. But I feel like I was off in my presentation of that thing to this man and being able to honor this man even when he might not be being honorable.
Right.
And it's a reflection. Really, I go back to, I tell any children I work with, young people I work with, I always say, respecting someone is more of a reflection of you than it is of them. I said, and it may be reminding them of who they are and who they're becoming. I said, but mostly it's about you. And so that's what I learned in watching you. I lead with respect all the time. And my goal is to never go into a space of disrespect with anybody. If I feel I need to go there, then at that point, my question is, do I need to remove myself from this relationship in a sense of whatever connection I have with the person, or if it's just a partner collaboration kind of thing?
Right.
Hey, this ain't working because I want to get disrespectful with you, and I can't shake that feeling. So we need to kind of create some distance with us, because I don't think it's right to disrespect anybody, even if they disrespect me. Or if I'm like, you just keep disrespecting me. I learned that from you. I've never seen you get just downright nasty. Not saying you never have.
Right.
But I've never seen you get downright nasty. And if you have, I would imagine it hasn't been often. Most of the time that I've heard people have their issues with you, it's usually things that are true, that they need to work on, that you might have had a hard saying for them.
Right.
And I'm not saying you might have, maybe the delivery for that person might have been off, but usually when the person knows that the accountability is correct, usually what happens is it's like a deviation from the topic. So if I'm telling you, hey, you do this, and that's a sign that maybe you have some character things you need to be working through. And we're supposed to be friends.
Right.
And you take that and say, well, you said it in such a tone and da-da-da-da. And it's like, so I wasn't wrong about what I said. I was wrong to you by how I said it.
Right.
So, but you want to just focus on how I said it.
Right.
Even though you know my heart, and you lead with that. Whenever you say a word about me, you'll say, I know their heart. And but as soon as I come and I hold you accountable, now you done forgot my heart because you didn't like the tone. So now so I say that to say women are taking accountability, and I've seen it. That's why I tell people all the time. I said, I'm sorry that you have only been around women who don't like accountability, who don't respect men, who don't. I said, I know women who ain't never had a good man in their life until they got to care of you. I said, and they find it very easy to respect the men that care of you. Right. Even when the men that care of you aren't always being respectable. because we're humans and we don't do, I'm a man of care of you, by the way, so I'm not speaking in, like I'm speaking at them. But even when the men of care of you, myself included, may not be living in a respectable way, our wives may be reporting back today. Accountability people, yeah, he's doing this or he's not doing that. He's not attentive. He seems to be distant. He seems to be, he's being short with me. He's doing, even when the men is acting like that, I don't see my sisters that's in the circle. They don't treat me no negative kind of way.
Right. Right.
And I'm sure Diana has had her times when she's talked. But my point is, that's why I say it's deeper than just saying, well, men do this and women do that. To your point, you went for accountability in times when you knew, like, maybe how I just said that wasn't right.
Right.
And I need to talk to somebody about this. Let me get a second opinion, much like you would do for a diagnosis in the health realm. So I just wanted to stop and point that out, that women take accountability, men take accountability, and then some men don't take accountability and some women don't take accountability.
Right. And I think it was important for me. And it was just important for me because, one of the things I've had to learn and grow into and understand is, I'm what they call a truth teller.
Yeah.
Right. So I am a truth teller. And that, of course, gets me in a lot of places where, some people, don't like it or don't like me. But, and the words of my best friend, and that's fine. But I'm a truth teller. But I think so many years that I, again, my princess life, I, probably would try to kind of hide or dim that or not want to be like I said, I want to be like a damsel in distress. I want you to take care of me. I don't want to do my life. I want you to do my life. You know what I mean? So like I wanted Pastor James to do my life. I wanted Pastor Chris to do my life and just let me chill.
Yeah.
But it's interesting enough because I know you're very big on this as far as names and meaning of names. Yeah. And that's how you're very big at how you name your children. You're very intentional about what their names mean. And I think about, now mind you, my parents, has nothing to do with my parents. I'm sure they didn't think about this. But some years ago, usually when you see the name Andrea, so this is for all you Andreas out there, and Andrea, however you pronounce it. Mm-hmm. When we go look up name card, or even Google, what have you, usually they'll say the meaning of Andrea means like beautiful, lovely, something like that. Yeah. Right? A couple years ago, Pastor James told me the real meaning of my name. And it ain't sexy. The real meaning of Andrea is man-faced woman.
Yeah.
And my middle name is Louise. I was named after my grandmother. And Louise means warrior.
Yeah.
Now, of course, my parents had no idea about any of this.
But your grandmother was a warrior.
Right. Oh, yeah, she was. She wasn't on God's side.
In her own battles.
Oh, yeah. And then she was a little rough. But but when I think about the meaning of my name, man-faced woman, warrior.
Yeah.
It's all about who I am, my makeup, and my strength, my inner strength. It doesn't mean getting out there and fighting with my hands and things like that. But I'm built like that. Like God built me as a strong, courageous, bold woman. And so now I'm beginning to live my name and who God created me to be. And so I'm not the damsel in distress. At all. And really the last 4.5 years has really, really honed in on that for me as far as, not being, and I don't need to play weak. I don't need to play, it was derogatory how they would say, dumb blind. That's very derogatory. It really is. Yeah. But it was in my time, I'm 60 people.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot off limits at that
right.
time.
And so these are the kind of things they would say.
Yeah.
And so, I would be like, I would try to play the dumb blind, like,
and they'll be all right, though. They got a lot of privilege. They'll be all right.
They'll be okay. But I'm just saying those are the things of how I came up in the era that I came up in and who I was raised by and different things like that. So, you dumb yourself down. Mm-hmm. You're afraid to be the bright light in the room because, that's not necessarily always accepted. I want, and, just be accepted and let me be palatable to everybody around me. What you can handle. And even honestly, even in my own marriage, dumb yourself down a little to be palatable to your mate because maybe they really can't handle the full extent of who you really are.
Yeah.
So
And I think to your point, I was just talking in the last episode. I was speaking with Diana, and after the episode, I said, actually before the episode, way before the episode, I said to her, I said, one of my I said, I don't know if it was a guilty pleasure. I said, but it's one of my things that I haven't ever shared with anybody. I said, I kind of like fan out when you get into your maternity, labor and delivery talk, and I hear you in your meetings, and she's a part of these committees, and she's speaking that professional language.
Right.
I said, I kind of fan out because one, I see your passion coming through. Two, it's like you're like, if you don't know, she could be very quiet, reserved.
Yeah.
And so when she goes into that bag, it's like, oh, there's so much. I'm boisterous. I'm gonna talk every topic come up, whether I know it or not, I'm gonna engage in the conversation. I'm gonna either use that conversation to learn, and I'm not afraid to even say something that may be wrong or off, and somebody might who knows about it may be able to correct me and kind of bring me back on track. I'm not afraid of that. Whereas like Diana's more reserved, so she's not always sharing out on
Right.
information that she has in her head, but she's super intelligent. And so to hear her go into the topics that she really likes to spend her words on, because she's not one to spend her words too much, but when she does, it's important. But I was like, that's amazing. Watching you grow up, watching me growing up, watching you, I knew how dynamic you were, how intelligent you are. And I saw that I've always had this high respect for you just as a person. And I think that respect helped me also respect other women that I come encounter with and realize like women have things to offer. Right. And sometimes I have to be careful because I've been conditioned through society, through people that have been in my life, just because we've been more of a patriarchal society in the way that we present, when really women kind of run things behind the scenes. They've always kept things going. If you go to any sports league, who's running the administrative stuff? And if you don't have the administrative stuff tight, you can't even run the league because things
Beyonce say, "Who run the world?"
Yeah,
Girl,
so
girl.
men got to be out front as the leaders, as the superhero with the hands on the hip, fist on the hip, looking off into the distance. But women were really the ones who were keeping things going and keeping things afloat. And so my respect and regard, some people may look at it as pandering, like, oh, you pander to women. Like, no, I've just been able to see how dynamic women are from a very young age. And most of the people who saw me for who I was and didn't judge me for my lapses, whether it be educationally with my learning differences and ADHD, most of the people who led in that department for me were women. Right. And they had to get the men to be like, listen, he's still a viable asset to this realm. If it's sports, if it's education, treat him as such. Just because he's maybe having a difficulty with this, reading comprehension or paying attention and things like that, women are the ones who showed me patience. And it takes high intelligence to be patient. It takes high intelligence to be patient. And I recognize it. It takes intelligence, and it also takes emotional intelligence. It takes an IQ and an EQ to be patient. And I realize women typically have this kind of innate ability to have a high IQ and a high EQ. So they can manage your household budget and even your company budget on top of that. And then also tend to your heart and your soul at the same time.
Right.
That's a different level of intelligence that I haven't seen men, and I don't think that men can't do it. It's just that we've associated that with femininity. And so it's become a thing of, oh, you in tune with your feminine side. So that's like, it's not a masculine thing. Men are just supposed to come in, give orders, lay the law down, rule with an iron fist. And that's what men do. You know what I'm saying? If your 5-year-old's having a tantrum, then you better tell them to be quiet and sit down in the corner and never have a dialogue. And this is why most men come against things like gentle parenting, because they confuse it with permissive parenting. Right. It's two different things. Yeah, gentle parenting is the approach to how I hold you accountable as a parent and how I make you clear of your responsibilities as a child in this house. Permissive parenting is what they're really talking about. But that's a whole nother thing, and it helps me segue into motherhood. So what I want to talk about is, when we think about motherhood, I want you to look at some things that you got from my mom that you could say that was good, and I do have that incorporated into my flavor of how I flow as a mother. And then those things that we kind of alluded to, that you kind of alluded to, where you were like, I absolutely won't be taking that with me into my motherhood, and I'll be doing it a different way because I didn't see that as the best way to be an effective mother, and I didn't see me taking my children through that again for another generation.
Let's see. As far as what did I? Can I be all right? Let me be honest. As far as in the sense of raising you all and some of the characteristics of caring, protecting, nurturing, um, with you and Jordan, I that's not stuff that I got from my mother.
Okay.
And for many reasons, whatever's going on in her life necessarily, but mostly everything how I mothered you and Jordan were kind of like, I didn't get that, but I want my sons to have this.
Yeah.
Right. So I was, some people might say in the world today, like they might be like, you were just overly what have you, or helicoptery and things like that. But
the boys were sheltered.
They were sheltered, yes.
Yeah.
Like you were sheltered, and because I cared for you all. I was determined to care for you. I was determined to nurture you.
Yeah.
And protect you to the degree that I could. Now, not anything I say I did perfectly, because I didn't. But I know that you and Jordan received definitely out of my voids in my life. And, you all were with me. I interacted with you. I talked to you all. I had determined not to be harsh, even when I've had to correct you all or discipline you, but not harshly, because, we was corrected and disciplined very harshly.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to, again, it's interesting. Pastor James and Pastor Chris came in my life. You were turning too. And so I started learning a lot from them as far as how to correct lovingly, how to, discipline, but yet, not destroy. And so that's why I learned that whole idea of not to hit you with my hands, because I didn't want you to be confused when I'm coming toward you and you to be like, is she coming to hit me or is she coming to hug me? You know what I mean? So that's, here comes the paddle. We introduced the paddle. So now you're only paddled and my hands are safe. And so there's a sense of safety to you and a sense of safety to Jordan. These things from them and teaching and modeling and things like that. But, my mother was my mother. And to be very honest with you, my eldest brother did most of, I always say, the raising.
Okay.
Because my mother was either working or out doing her, and so, my eldest brother was more the domestic and trying to particularly take care of myself and Terry. We were the two youngest. So really trying to take care of us and watch over us and things like that coming up. So there were just things like, I feel like there were ways where my mom abdicated, her parental responsibility to be able to be free to continue to be her. And I didn't want to abdicate my, responsibility. I wanted to raise you all. Like, I didn't realize how maternal I was until after you were born. So I didn't, I'm like, okay, I'm having a baby. I know I'm going to love him, but okay. But all of a sudden, I'm holding you and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then now it's time for me to go back to work. I didn't last long working outside the house because I was like, I want to be home with my baby.
Yeah.
I want to see my babies first. I don't want to hear about them.
Yeah.
I want to take care of him. I want to be the one that's pouring my life into him. And so I came home, I think when you were like 9 months old, I came home and stayed home from that point on, because after I had Jordan, I was like, no, I want to give my sons what was not given to me, and then even with motherhood, I had to kind of figure it out. My mother didn't necessarily even come alongside of me and help me with that, which was why when you were now turning to be a father and Diana becoming a mother, I was determined to give you all out of my void again, 2020 happened, but we were setting it up where I was like, hey, you come stay with us for like 2-3 weeks because I want to help you all along. Diana, I want to help you along of becoming a mother. I want to give to you all support that was never given to me. And it just so happened since 2020 happened, it was like, hey, y'all went from hospital to our house anyway. Yeah. Right? And you stayed for the year. Yeah. Before you all moved out and bought your own home, which was great and wonderful because I was able to give, particularly Diana, and she, she wanted that. She told me, like, I wanted that. And she was kind of scared, of becoming a mother and not knowing, because that's realistic. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I said to her, I wanted to give you what was never given to me, because there's no way in the world you should be left unto yourself to figure out, especially when you're a first-time mother. Yeah, it really shouldn't have, and that's not, and it's biblical to help. Oh yeah, it's more biblical. Yeah, for families even to live together. Yeah, that's sure. Biblical. Yeah,
Remember, you said this right. This is on recording because you know how I think. Listen, how I think.
Don't listen.
So this is on recording.
Please don't listen to him.
Kiana Jordan, you next.
Sorry,
you got one.
But yeah, so I think that's what it was. So for me, it wasn't necessarily, and motherhood was not informed so much from my mother. Yeah, it was informed. Your auntie, Pastor Chris, she'll tell you it's from the Holy Spirit. When we were just away recently, and we were talking about my life, and she said, "Boy, you really are the house that wisdom built." And she looked at me. She said, "And that's from the Holy Spirit. That's not from me."
Ooh, that just gave me my title for the episode.
She said, "You're the house that wisdom built."
That's facts.
And so, majority of my moving about this world it's wisdom. No man can boast on Andrea. Yeah, literally, figuratively, right? Because we know my father's situation, right? Yeah. So there's no man or woman that can boast on the formation of Andrea at all. When if you trace my journey enough, you know that.
I know that. and I'm gonna be real with you. The next segment really speaks to this too. But I always tell people, I would tell my director, and I would say, my mom did such a great job. I hated it as a teenager, even to a certain degree as a young adult. But as I got older, even though it may make you feel a way because you want to feel a way. Right. And so when you get the question, you immediately kind of get positioned to, okay, that's fine. That's how you responded emotionally to that thing or whatever. But it also kicks you. Now you don't even have to say it. It kicks in my head of what is God saying to you in this? No matter what. Right. No matter what. Right. And that's so wise because it caused me not to get stuck in the visceral response, emotional response. Like, it's okay to have the emotions, but don't allow the emotions to make you say, do, think, or act in a way that you can't take back. Right. And so doing that helps you slow down. Right? Pop helped me do that on the basketball court. Slow down, let the game come to you. Don't rush. Don't force it. So I got the messaging there. And then in life, you were giving me the slow down. What is God saying to you? God, okay, you really wanted to do this thing. You really wanted to go here. You really wanted to hang out with this person. Right. It didn't work out. What is God saying? And it could be something simple. I used to think, oh, you being all deep. It didn't have to. I realized as I got older, it's not about being deep. Right. It could just be God saying, you need to chill. Right. And that's why I shut that down. That's why I allowed them to have other plans, or for them to get, like, sometimes friends to get in trouble. You can't hang out no more because they got in trouble. So now you can't go over their house and all that. And you're like, man, I'm and it's like, what's God saying? Right. Maybe he just wants you to stay put.
Because, the reality is this. I really just said that because, realistically, I'd run and control your life. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's just real. Yeah. My natural bent was to control you and Jordan's life, to tell y'all what to do, when to do, how to do, when not to do it, right? Because I think I know, right? The Lord had to discipline me first to be like, first of all, you're not the Holy Spirit, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're not, no. And you need to point them to me so they don't always try to come to you and like you have the answer, like you're God. And so that was really a discipline
Yeah.
for, because I probably wanted to say otherwise. Well, but
Anyway.
right. The Lord was like, no, just, and to this day, I say that to you. To this day, I say that to Jordan now.
Yeah.
When he'll call me and I'll go, it's okay. I said, well, just listen for God and see what is God asking of you? What is God saying?
Yeah.
Just God will show you, God will speak.
Yeah.
Our thing, my son Luca, our thing is, I tell them all the time, I say, you make my heart smile. And they love that. And now Luca will say to me, Gigi, you make my heart smile. And then she'll tell me, you're the best, Gigi.